carefully. The actual assignment's referred to as a signature assignment. It is worth well over half of a letter grade, so it's kind of important that you pay attention to the assignment. I'm literally going to give it to you. Again, it's not posted yet, but I'm going to show you what it is you're going to see so that you'll have an idea how to navigate this. In essence, what this assignment is, it encompasses a number of different things that are necessary to meet certain guidelines for Vernon College academic standard, which is why we even have the assignment. It includes a mathematic piece, it includes an interpretive piece, all kinds of different things that are of no consequence to y'all in the grand scheme of things. It's just why the assignment is arranged the way it is. It's considered a case study, and for this case study, again, this document is going to show up or on Canvas, and it's going to tell you, I'm not going to read this whole thing to you, we've got stuff to do besides that. But this case study is about Mr. Soprano from TV. We've added some things to his world and created a case about him. He goes to the local ER because he's wigging out about some other stuff. He gives us a lot of information about himself, which is what a personal report is for. That gives you the case study part, goes for a couple, 3 pages. Okay, you get to the end of the case study. Now, what this case study, all the information you need to complete this particular assignment is on this document, every single piece. And not only that, I'm going to tell you how to do it at the same time. So write this stuff down. If you're paying real close attention, your assignment will be finished before we are today. I'm not going to tell you when you should write stuff down. This is no-brainer enough that you should be able to manage this. You're going to have to come up with a diagnosis for Mr. Soprano. I'll explain that to you in a moment. You will have to listen carefully to the instructions. You are going to have to choose one diagnosis out of a list of 4. That's part of the exercise. The other part of that first piece is that you're going to exclude 3 others. Now, I want you to tell me why you're not going to use them. Now, this is important. Don't tell me you're not going to use this one because he meets criteria for that one. I know what he meets criteria for. I wrote the assignment. I don't need y'all to tell me that. I need you to tell me the criteria that you're excluding with. Does that make sense to you? Okay. You're going to pick one. You're going to exclude the other 3 and tell me why. If you don't tell me why you excluded them, it's going to cost you 5 points. Here are the criteria for each of the diagnoses. This is the criteria for major depressive disorder. This is what you have to be diagnosed with major depressive disorder. And it has to be for a period of at least 2 weeks. This has the diagnostic criteria for bipolar I disorder, which is option number 2. Everything you need to know about bipolar disorder, no, bipolar I, not bipolar II, that's a different one. Then it gives you the information for bipolar I. Here's the diagnostic criteria for anti-personality disorder. Everything that's necessary. A couple of fun pieces for that, just to be mindful of. To be diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, an individual must be at least 18 years of age, which Mr. Soprano is, if you wanted to consider that. You have to have evidence of the disorder before the age of 15, which means there has to be significant history that you can reference, that sort of thing. There's the diagnostic criteria for erectile disorder, which is the 4th option that Mr. Soprano, you can diagnose Mr. Soprano with. All that information's in the case study. You're going to pick one of those 4, and then you're going to tell me why you excluded the other ones. That's first. The next piece of the exercise is intelligence testing, which is what I do. I give people assessments that give me information about them and how they function cognitively or emotionally. The test that this exercise uses is the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, 4th edition. That's really not what you need to be worried about. You need to pay attention down here. These are the scores that you're working with. This is going to be your math piece. You see these blanks down here? There's a blank here. There's a blank over here. You're going to be putting information. I'm going to tell you how to get the numbers that go in there right now. Okay? This is how you do this. So listen carefully. The full scale IQ is an average of these scales right here, which means to get the number, first off, do not utter a number in a moment. Some of y'all are going to get really eager and run the number right now. And that's fine. You can't. Just keep your mouth shut. Just add them up and divide by 4. That's the number that goes in that hole. You're going to get a question. The same thing works in this direction. This is the verbal comprehension score is 96. The range for that score means that it's plus or minus. That means it's 96 plus or minus some number that gets you to 91 or 101. The secret is 5. 96 plus or minus 5 gets you the range. If 96 plus or minus 5 gets you the range here, then the score down here, also plus or minus 5, is the score that goes over here. What that translates into, you're going to have this magic number down here. To get the range, it is plus or minus what? 5. Any question about that? I mean, we could go into all the statistical craziness about how to make all this stuff go, but that is not necessary for general psychology students. That's doctoral level stuff. About how we get to those numbers is really not important for y'all. Just the fact that you can add them up and divide is all we need you to do. Okay? Now, page 7 of this big sheet, this whole document here, is the answer sheet. It will also be loaded separately. So you'll on the, stand by. In your assignment, this is not your class, by the way, so it doesn't matter. It'll look just like this on your homepage. It'll say signature assignment. You're going to click it. You're going to find 2 links up here. One of them is the sheet that I'm looking at right now, and the other one is an individual answer sheet. You can use the answer sheet that's in the first document, or you can use this answer sheet. They're exactly the same. It's just the big document includes everything. You're going to work on the answer sheet. All right, I want you to download it onto your machine, put in the information that's necessary on that document, save it to your machine. There's going to be a link over here that says upload, and you're going to upload it when it's time to do that. Some of you will get lost in the middle of trying to upload something and wig out because it gets lost in cyberspace somewhere or whatever else. Please don't send me an email asking me if I have it. If you're concerned about it, just send it as an email attachment. No worries. That way you know for sure I will have gotten it one way or the other. Another piece of the exercise, which is also information you're going to get from me right now as well as later, you're going to identify 2 most appropriate therapeutic interventions for Mr. Soprano, and you're going to tell me why those interventions are the most appropriate in this circumstance. They are listed as psychotropic medication, which is basically medication people use for emotional/chemical concerns. Cognitive behavioral therapy is one branch of therapeutic intervention among many various kinds. Electroconvulsive therapy, also known as ECT, is when they hook little electrodes into your brain and shock you. They do not normally. It is available in and she brings up a valid point. Pay attention to what I'm telling you. This is just one of the secrets to this answer. It is used as an absolute last resort when nothing else has or is considered to be possible that will work. Is it possible that someone would be so depressed and in such a bad place that they could not function without something significant being done to alter that person's brain? Yes. Is it common? It is not. It is extremely rare because it brings with it significant side effects, both retroactive amnesia as well as the other type, which means that after the shock therapy you might not remember things. You might not remember things before the shock therapy. Retrograde amnesia and anterograde amnesia is what that's called. Don't worry about what it is, just know that it affects people's memories. You're going to pick 2 of those. You're going to tell me why you're not going to use the third one. That's important. Be sure and tell me why you're not going to use that one. The use of psychotropic medication and cognitive behavioral therapy is a combination that is extremely common and extremely beneficial in most cases. The next part of the exercise we've already done, actually. You're going to take that full-scale IQ number and you're going to put it in here. That was that number that you added them up and divided by 4, right? You got a number. That's the number that goes in that blank. Not another one. Don't pull one out of your hiney. The one that you just added and multiplied with and divided by 4 is the number that goes in there. The range, the full-scale range of scores is what? This number, what? Plus or minus 5. This is the minus side, that's the plus side. Now, Mr. Soprano's IQ falls in the 45th percentile. What that means is that 45 people out of 100 scored better than he did, and 55 out of 100 scored less than he did. Not the other way around.
45 people out of 100 scored better.
And 55 individuals scored less than. It is a number range that they give to represent how people's scores fluctuate together. To give you an idea about this score, the average human IQ, without any difficulties, is 100. If I was to IQ test both rooms, the average would be 100 plus or minus 15. It's called the standard deviation, actually plus or minus 10. In other words, that I would expect all of the IQs in the room, both rooms, to be between 90 and 110. That is normal. That is average. You get to 111, it's above average. If you get below 90, it's below average. And it goes up or down accordingly. So Mr. Soprano's IQ at the 45 percentile is normal, which means that he's just a normal dude when it comes to cognitive function. But you're going to explain that 45 do better, 55 do less. And again, these are some possible social interventions for his particular disorder. You will have picked out two individual possibilities, whether it's cognitive therapy, psychotropic medication, and electroconvulsive shock therapy. Now, socially, you're going to recommend some other options. You're either going to suggest a support group for grief, a grief support group. Grief support groups are not like your average everyday family group or typical what I would call normal group therapy. Grief therapy is a group of individuals who are dealing specifically with grief issues that may or may not be related to some other sort of emotional concern. Grief related only. MHMR. You will find in most cities of any size either an actual office or a satellite office for some sort of local MHMR group. In Wichita Falls is the Helen Farabee Mental Health and Mental Retardation Center. People refer to it simply locally as MHMR, and we all know that they're referring to Helen Farabee. If you go to my house in Nocona, you're going to find a Helen Farabee MHMR office over in Bowie, which is 20 miles down the road. Now, the only reasons individuals would go to MHMR are these. They have no other access to any sort of care. They don't have money to pay to go see a particular sort of professional. Listen carefully. Mr. Soprano is a very wealthy man. And I'll leave it at that. He is not concerned about his health care. If anybody ever watched any of The Sopranos, he went to see a psychiatrist and was not concerned about his ability to pay her at all. You might also select individual therapy. Individual therapy is something I think everybody ought to do at least once. Everybody, regardless of whether or not you think you have an issue or not. It's not about dealing with issues per se, it's about coming to a little better understanding of yourself. Inpatient hospital facility. Listen carefully. Some of you are going to want to hospitalize Mr. Soprano, and that's your choice. please hear me well, that is your choice. There is information in the case study that suggests some level of suicidality, but there is nothing in the case study that suggests that suicide is imminent. The only time someone like me is going to try to have somebody hospitalized is when someone is actively suicidal. Do they have a plan? Do they have access? Do they have means to do that? Somebody walks in my office and says, yeah, I'm concerned about killing myself today. I'm going to smile real big and say, do you have a plan? And if somebody says, yeah, I've got a loaded .45 in my car, I'm going to say, we probably need to talk to somebody about that. Who would you like us to call? And we're going to call right then, right now. We're not going to wait. We're not going to talk about it tomorrow. We're going to make a phone call right now. That individual is going to make the phone call, him or herself, using my phone. We're not going to wait. We're not going to talk about it some more. We're going to do it right now. And if that individual will not call, then I will dial for them, and I will use the numbers 911 and take that decision away from them.
Does that happen often?
It does not. I have never had anyone hospitalized. I've dealt with individuals who have been recently released from hospitals, but I have not ever hospitalized anyone. I have not. It is, in other words, for me at least, it's extremely rare. Rare as in not ever happened before. I've had a couple of individuals who have been somewhat suicidal, but not suicidal as an imminent. And the time that one lady was probably seriously on the edge of considering suicide, and her option at that point, she decided to come to my office. She brought her weapons to my office. She brought her loaded .45 to the office at my request. She was, I'm sorry?
What did you do with them?
What did I do with them? Well, first of all, the office I was working in at the time had no policy for such things, so we wrote policy before she got there. That's the first thing we did. We came up with a contract that says, my name is Henrietta Bartholomew, whatever it was, and I am releasing my weapon, and it was some kind or other .45. And she signed off on that, saying that we had custody of her weapon and that we would release that weapon only to someone else who could verify her safety, basically. Then her husband was out of town. So again, this is a side story that you'll hear part of again, I'm sure. So then what happened is that we had her weapon. I had her weapon. We didn't have it. I had it. I was under supervision at the time. I wasn't licensed, so my supervisor was on the phone. We were literally writing policy in these moments. And so we kept it. Then her husband came back into town from being away for work and was pissed off of he was angry. We released the weapon to him with another document that said, we were going to release your wife's weapon to you under these conditions, one of which was you will keep it locked up and away from her. He had to agree to do that. Okay, no worries. He went away. That was on a Friday. He went away on Saturday or Sunday late for work again. Monday or Tuesday, somewhere along in there, she called me again and was sitting at her kitchen table, but now she had 2 guns. I was very curious as to how she got 2. She only started with 1. How did we end up with 2? And how we ended up with 2 was that he had taken hers when we released it to him, and what he did was he went and locked it in his pickup in the garage. She had to get into his pickup for whatever reason. Not only was hers there, that's where he kept his, so now she has 2. She calls me a little bit flustered. I have both of these weapons. I said, I think it's really kind of important that you bring them to me. So what did she do? She put them in a grocery sack, and she brought me 2 of them, one of which was loaded, chambered, and ready to go. She was relatively serious that day. So now when husband gets back to town 3 or 4 days after that, he is really angry now because now we've got all of his guns. This is your bad dude. Do what we tell you, and we won't have any problem with this. We released the weapons to him, and that was the end of that. We never heard anything else about the weapons. Now there's a significant therapeutic backstory that you don't have that gets her to the place where not only was she willing to kill herself, she was also willing to kill somebody else. And she had ample reason for that. I'm not going to give you that part of the story today. It's not necessary today. You'll have to wait for another time for that. So anyway, inpatient hospitalization after I've gone down this bunny trail with my friend with the guns is that suicide must be imminent right now. Somebody calls you, they're standing on the overpass and about to jump off. You probably ought to call somebody about that. somebody you know calls you and says, I'm standing on the flyover and thinking about jumping off, you better just hang up your phone and start dialing 911. You better do it awful fast. Because by the time you get that number dialed, they may have already jumped. And I have visited with individuals who have jumped off the flyover and lived to tell about it. Some things come up like that. Group therapy is another option that is different than grief therapy or grief support. That's different. Group therapy is when you got a group of people working with various sorts of challenges or issues. You can have a group that's specialized and deals with one particular disorder, but more times than not, you have a facilitator, someone who runs that group, who is in charge of making sure that the group just moves along reasonably well. What happens in group is that you encourage individuals to speak and to be who they are, and in the process, they learn how to communicate more appropriately with one another. Hence, they learn how to communicate more appropriately with individuals outside the group. You learn how to call people out. Oh, Henrietta, you seem like that really upset you. Is everything okay? And then you let Henrietta tell us all about it. I've been in more than one group where I was either the facilitator or a co-facilitator. I've had individuals become extremely hostile in groups. There was one lady at one point, one of the reasons she was in a group is that she had split, which is how you end up with an extra personality. And she had tried to run over, in her car, run over her abuser. And she was serious. She tried to run over him more than once. She was not playing. I've had people get caught in their front yard walking down the street in the middle of the night in their 90s. Trying to visit with a lady once upon a time in another group who woke up 15 miles out of town in a barn in her nightgown and has no earthly idea how she got there or when she got there. You see all kinds. Group therapy can be extremely fun. It's very rewarding in some contexts. Other times it's extremely debilitating. You're going to pick 3 of those. And you're also going to tell me why you're not going to choose the other 2. And I have given you the reasons that you would not select 2 of them already. This is the last part of the experiment or the assignment. You're going to write a 1-paragraph summary of this whole thing. And all this is, it's going to say something like, Mr. Soprano was a 55-year-old white dude who presented at the ER because he was feeling X, Y, and Z, yada, yada, yada. It was suggested, or someone suggested, that we do some cognitive testing or that we do some assessment work. We did that assessment work using this tool, and it says that he has this IQ and da-da-da-da-da. We recommend X, Y, and Z. And from a social perspective, we recommend that he do Q, R, and S. Have a good day. Now listen to me carefully. Again, I have had some individuals skip the whole thing and go to the paragraph at the bottom, which does, by the way, include all of the correct information if you've done it correctly. Don't do that. The assignment is all of those pages, all of the steps, and the summary paragraph. Not doing the summary paragraph is going to cost you 20 points. Each one of those sections, by the way, is worth 20 points. There's 5 sections. It's worth, probably 15 points, my bad. It's worth a lot. To not turn it in will cost you at least half a letter grade.
When is it due?
This class, it will not be due until, oh, by the way, I'll take it early. I'll take it tomorrow if you want to give it to me. It will, let me go back over here to y'all's class and we'll be sure of when it's due. We'll look at the course outline because that's where that information ought to be. I saw it. Did you see it? November the 3rd.
But it's already available if we want to go to.
It's not available yet, but it will be shortly.
Okay.
When I say shortly, in a day or so. But I'll take it any time between now and then. Now, first off, do you have any question about that at the moment? You may have questions about it later. I would certainly understand. I'd understand if you have questions about it now. Okay. If you do happen to have a question about that, write it down. We'll come